Play your folk music. It is so good. I love it. I really, really do. I really
We love
do.
it too. We just get so absorbed.
No, you really do. And you just, yeah, I love it. I love it so much. You're number one fan. Although it's probably your parents, but besides your parents,
Yeah, I think they are number one fan.
which is fair enough, as they should
But
be.
they should be. Yeah, we wouldn't expect anything less.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, gosh. Hattie, do you have a quote of the week for me?
I do have a quote of the week. So, it's by a lady called Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she's an ecologist and Native American. And she's written a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which I
Yes.
read early in the year and absolutely loved it. So, this is a quote from her: "Experiments are not about discovery, but about listening and translating the knowledge of other beings." What do you think to that?
Wow. Okay. So it's not about discovery, it's about translating the
Knowledge of other beings. So I guess
and
listening to
then
the environment, see what it can tell you, and then translating that, which
that's so beautiful. That is so incredible because what I'm getting from the quotes, and tell me what you're getting because maybe you're getting something different, but that often as humans, we always think that we are the know-it-alls and we know everything and nobody can know more than us. But I think there's so much knowledge out there that we either in the Western culture don't know and understand, that if we branch out, we could receive that knowledge through others, but also that like animals know and that the plants know. I always think about whenever there's going to be like a massive flood, isn't it that a whole bunch of the animals move out of the area before
yes,
anything happens, right? Because they know something's coming.
yeah,
And
they're so
so
intuitive.
if we listen to that, we could learn a lot more.
I agree. And I also take from it that interacting with nature is not just about learning, but also about respect. It's not just about what we can take from those,
Yes,
from the other beings that we coexist with, but also what can we give back? And what are they already doing that if we just listened, we'd understand them so much better. And it's not just about what we can take, but about understanding who we're living with. I mean, we're all here together, right?
yes,
And
whether we
if
like it or
and
not.
yeah, and like you say, as humans, we often think that we know so much better. We often think that we can just squash this nature down and we can just take control over it. And we know we know best. So if we want to put something here and ruin what's going on here in the natural world, then we can because we're humans and we have the capabilities to. But it's not necessarily the best thing to do, which we don't know unless we actually listen and observe and understand and respect the nature.
Exactly.
It's
That's
quite
such a good
powerful.
point as well. It's very powerful. That's beautiful and powerful and feeds very well into what we're going to be talking about today, doesn't it?
It does. That's what I thought. So, welcome everybody. We are Understory Learning and we are a nature based podcast. I'm Hattie.
And I'm Caitlin.
And we're here to share our adventures as we go through this journey with you. We have a bit of a disclaimer about all of the information that we have learned is stuff that we've learned from our own perspective and through our own experience, and there's going to be a lot of gaps in our knowledge. So what we say, although we try to be as accurate as we can, we're not always going to be the most accurate. And if you can point any of our flaws out, we would love that. We are on this education journey with you. We are learning alongside you. So please bear with us with that.
End of the day, we are just human. So
Yes, we are. And
mistakes
we
are
are
always
students.
made and continuously learning students.
Exactly. It's the best way to live life, I think.
It is 100%. And then in today's episode, we've got actually quite an exciting episode because when this comes out, it will be before Halloween.
Something
so happy
like that.
spooky time.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting. I know there are a lot of mixed and big feelings around Halloween, both on the positive side and the negative side. But we're just going to touch briefly on some of the symbols around Halloween. But we're also mostly going to be talking about two of the different theories that we've been looking into with regards to our forest school course that we're doing.
Yes. So about why forest schools exist. And also a little bit of the background behind that and why it became a thing and how it's beneficial basically
Yes.
getting into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. Yeah, so I'm going to be focusing on general forest schools, like an overview of what is forest school education and kind of where it came from and all those beautiful questions that you mentioned. And I know you are going to be speaking about a specific theorist, right?
Yeah, do you want to kick off first with yours? And then mine will tie in quite nicely, I think.
Okay, perfect. So when we started on this whole forest school education journey, I was very excited about the idea of it, the concept of it. All I'd really heard about up until this point was that a lot of schools in Finland back onto forests, and students will spend part of the day in the classroom, part of the day learning outside in the nature. What I found really interesting is, so one of our units that we need to do is looking at different theorists and how they tie into forest school education. And I kind of was like, whoa, hold up. First, I need to know what forest school education is. And so, wow, there are a lot of different definitions around forest school education, but there's also just a lot of to where it's all like kind of sprung from. So one of the definitions that I found is that forest schools or nature schools is an educational ethos and practice that centers the land and child at play. So both the child and the educators build a relationship with the land, bringing in that respect that you were talking about. And basically, there's regular and repeated access to the same outdoor space over and over again over an extended period of time.
I love what you said about play, like how it's centered around the child and the nature, and it's how it's bringing that together. Because I mean, the best way to learn is through play, isn't it?
100%.
Like you're
Yep.
so interested, and you have that freedom to explore what you're enjoying, and to explore your environment, and to explore your collaborations with other people. Like we kids who are playing, some of the fastest growth comes from that development in those moments, doesn't it?
No, it really does. And I think there's been a very big shift recently. I'm seeing it in South Africa. I don't know if you're seeing it in the UK as well. There's been a bigger shift towards learning through play in schools here. So they try and incorporate like an element at least once in the day where there's some sort of learning through play. It does become harder the older you get, especially when the curriculum is so intense and hectic.
Yeah, but then I think, and maybe I'm tangenting off here. Is that a
That's
word?
okay.
Tangent. Maybe I'm
Well,
going
we'll
off.
make it one.
But so I'm tangenting off here because play, like we still, as adults, we still play, don't we? It's like, what is play? It's fun. When you're having fun, when you're doing something that is intrinsically enjoyable. And that doesn't stop as you get older. It just evolves, doesn't it? It just changes.
Changes. Or I think what we don't realize when creating curriculums, and this is where forest school comes in really nicely, is the fact that we don't always realize that if we allow children to play and we put certain things in place for them to play with, sort of guide them according to that. So not telling them what to do, but you kind of just start putting things out there and see where they take it. But they learn a lot more. They deepen that thinking a lot more as well. And so they've got this stronger understanding. So one of the things I noticed a lot through a lot of the different research that I was doing was that because of the holistic child-centered approach to forest schools, the children make incredible growth and they actually are better off when they go to different schools.
Yeah.
So a lot of schools, and I don't know again if this is the same in the UK, not all forest schools go from preschool all the way through. There are schools that incorporate elements of primary schools and high schools into forest schooling. Those tend to, from what I can understand, be more of the you're in the classroom for part of the day and out of the classroom in the forests, exploring, learning through part of the day. Then I did find here a really nice quote. And so this is from Dr. Mark Leather, who is the Associate Professor of Adventure Education and Outdoor Learning at Plymouth Margin University. And what Dr. Mark Leather says is, I trained as a secondary school science teacher and I still teach science. I just do so outdoors. You know, I just happen to be talking about the laws of motion when sitting in a canoe, or the thermal properties of energy transfer when we're sitting around a fire cooking. You can take many things and teach them in a forest school setting. I loved that quote.
Absolutely love that. Because it's true, like you don't
It
just
is.
learn by sitting in a classroom and hearing about it. You learn by doing it, and that's
Exactly.
something that teachers have known for a very long time, and schools have
Yeah.
implemented for a very long time. But
Mm.
actually getting out in that context and doing it in that context is it's so much more meaningful, isn't it?
So much more meaningful. And then we've also spoken about how nature's got this calming feeling, right, towards us. It just like relaxes us. And imagine those children who are these little anxiety balls at school, because the classroom can be a very stressful environment. Then you take them out of that into a place where they feel calm, where they can connect with nature, where they can be themselves, where there's a little bit more autonomy as well. There is still learning happening. There is still play happening. There's a lot more gross motor happening. So those are your big movements, swinging of the arms and the legs, climbing, all of that is your gross motor. But then there's a lot of fine motor skills incorporated as well, right? Plaiting is one that often gets done in forest schools, whether you're plaiting a flower crown or you are plaiting some rope together. I've seen children when they, instead of carving any pieces of wood, what I've seen, which is really cool, and it depends on the type of tree that you use, because I don't think the bark for all trees would allow this, but they can take a peeler and they can peel the little tree piece that you've given them, and they can kind of shape it using a peeler, which is obviously a lot safer for children to use than a knife.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And that's your fine motor skills. And then there's a lot of hand-eye coordination, and it's just
Yeah.
so many good things that
Well,
they're
those
getting.
motor skills as well and hand coordination, like those two things are something that as a music teacher I've realized or I've had to learn is something that kids in the age of technology are really struggling to develop at the rate that they used to. So when we were kids and we didn't have the gaming and we didn't have access to technology that kids do now, we would do things like coloring or like making things with our hands using puzzles or Rubik's cubes or whatever it is that we did to keep ourselves occupied. Most of that would be fine motor skills. And fine motor skills are so closely linked to your development of communication, of language, of orientation, of so
Mm,
many different brain processes that we completely underestimate. And so getting out in nature, doing forest schools and developing those fine motor skills, those gross motor skills, that hand-eye coordination, how amazing. Like
I know.
what an opportunity.
It really is that holistic education, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
a lot of schools almost like slap holistic education on their website, or it's just like this buzzword that people drop when I don't necessarily think they're doing it properly. So when we talk about the holistic approach or holistic education, it's about seeing the child as a whole, right? It's not about only purely academics. It's about their emotional self, their physical self, their all the different well-beings that make up this child are important
Yes.
and matter. And
Yes.
so it really is with forest schools, that is the main focus. And you are going to have times where children are going to want to work by themselves. And there are going to be times where children are playing games together. I think, and you were talking about now all the different technology that kids have these days. What also came up in what I was thinking about is the creativity. So I don't know if you've noticed, but it's definitely something I'm seeing with my different classes worldwide, is that there's almost a lack of creativity. Often children, and we know that they write about things that they're aware of and they know of. But I feel like there was also a lot of just like magical writing and crazy out of the box thinking. Whereas these days, I feel like everything I'm reading is about Roblox or Fortnite or all these games online that they're playing. And yeah, they're often putting a little bit of a twist on that. But I feel like children have lost that creativity, but also lost the opportunity to be bored,
It's
right?
so true. Like you go out to and this is no criticism on parents, honestly, because I think parents are doing the best they can with the energy they've got, the tools they've got, the time they've got. But the availability of technology these days, it means that when you go out to a restaurant or something, that the fact that this is available and the child knows that they have access to it because all the other kids also have access to it, it's like okay, well, instead of actually entertaining myself with people, instead of like communicating with my family and actually being prepared to be bored and therefore coming up with a way to entertain myself, I now have to rely on my parents giving me this device so that I can just not be bored because I'm scared of being bored. I don't want to be bored. It's uncomfortable. And then the parents, because they're like, well, we want to have a nice meal too. It's like, okay, here you go.
Yeah,
Here you go. And
exactly.
it's the easiest way to do it. And it's so sad that like that's now the standard, because there's so much pressure, I think, on parents to now provide that for their children. And I know people who they're like refusing and they're going against the grain with it. And it's really hard for them to do so because the
Really
pressure
difficult. Yeah,
from, I think, society as a whole. But it does mean that kids aren't learning to get bored. And then when you're not, like, boredom is so good for you. It teaches you how to be creative, doesn't it? You start thinking about things that you wouldn't think about if you're staring at a screen.
exactly. Because you're not thinking when you're staring at a screen, right? Like, yeah, that's a whole other
It
rabbit hole
is
that we could go down. But
100%.
yeah, so that was also just something that I was thinking about. That I was like, yeah, creativity, and there's a lot of creativity when it comes to forest school education. So
Truly.
forest schools, and I'll go into a little bit of history in a moment, but basically what I was able to find is that there are forest schools documented in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, USA, Malaysia, Switzerland, Spain, Ireland, Germany, the UK, Japan, South Korea, Italy, and South Africa finally has their first forest school, which I'm super excited about. I did. I went to go visit them. They are amazing. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. That was really cool.
That's so
Um,
cool.
I'm sure there are other forest schools out there because I'm sure our company that we're learning through has done stuff in Thailand.
Yeah, I think they do
So
train
yeah,
internationally.
and stuff's happening. So if you guys know of any other forest schools anywhere else in the world, please pop them in the comments. Let us know. We would love to hear about them and do some research about them.
Absolutely.
Do you know where the first forest school was ever created? In which country?
I'm going to guess Denmark.
Spot on.
That
Yeah.
was not an informed choice. That was just like a Denmark.
No, you are so spot on. Okay, so the first forest school was created by a lady named Ella Lautau. I'm sure I'm butchering her name, but she started the school in Denmark in the 1950s. And it kind of came up as a result of her and a couple of the other parents taking their own children to the forest. And she almost started a daycare within the forest. And that got a lot of interest from other parents. And so it kind of just started to grow. And then the first forest school in kindergarten was established,
Amazing.
um, which is just really, really cool. And then what's really interesting, and I think a lot of the time we see these almost, I don't know if synchronicities is the right word, but a lot of like crossover of like something's happening in one place, but it's also happening in the same another place at the same time. So around the same time in Sweden, an ex-military man whose name I'm just going to put on the screen because I don't trust myself to try and pronounce it, created this idea of outdoor schooling. And so that was in 1957. Basically, what Skogsmuller was, and that's what he created, was a set of 4 fictional characters which taught children all about nature. And then from those 4 characters, he also then went on to create the model of schooling called rain or shine schools. And that's very much aligned with forest schools today, right? So whenever I explain forest schools to people, I'm like, it doesn't matter rain, shine, snow, you are out in nature. Like there's a quote, there's no bad weather, only bad clothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that is very much like the forefront of forest school education. Like if you are dressed fine, jump in the puddle, live your best life,
Yeah.
you're good. And so, yes, the rain or shine schools then kind of became a thing from him. And they transitioned from occasional activities to formal nursery schools. So basically, when it started, it was more just like 2 hours here or there. And then it became like a proper school.
So
I know it is so cool, right? And so the first one there was established in 1985 by, I'll put the name on the screen as well. And then Germany started as well. Germany got onto this whole idea in the 1960s. But the first forest school kindergarten was not acknowledged or officially recognized as a state-supported kindergarten until 1993.
Okay, so that's a big gap, isn't it?
Yeah, so for 33 years they had this school going, but it wasn't state funded, which is pretty cool that they kept it going regardless.
Yeah, well, it shows that there's a need for it, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And then as of late 2017, we're approximately 1,500 forest school kindergartens in Germany alone.
Wow.
Some of which doing like a little bit of a mixture, like I spoke about earlier, where part of it was in the forest and part of it was more traditional daycare, where they spend like the afternoons inside and the mornings are out exploring the forest. Then Scandinavia. So there is this philosophy of free Luftliv. Again, I really did not pick an easy topic to pronounce the words of here. Basically, this philosophy translates to open air living. And so the Scandinavians have this it's very much part of who they are, where they do lots of wild swimming and green prescriptions for mental health. So they'll cycle to work and they get out and they're in nature as much as they possibly can. So it's like very much deep rooted in the Scandinavian people. And so often it was very easy for them to then bring the forest school education in, because the parents already believed in the benefits of forest school
Yeah,
education.
it was already a culturally valuable system, I suppose.
Yeah.
Or cultural values that help to build that system. So then it fits really nicely together.
Exactly. So forest schooling helps a lot with risk. Children learn to live with risk, right? They kind of learn very quickly how to balance that like risk and reward sort of thing. So yes, there are risks to climbing a tree. That's why you do so safely. But it's allowing those risks to happen in a safe space, right?
I was having a conversation about this on Sunday with somebody, and she was talking about her daughter and how her daughter loves climbing trees. And she said one of the biggest things that she's had to be careful of is not putting her fear onto her child, because her child will climb up to a certain amount, like a certain level, and if she's managed to get up there, she can manage to get down. But if she gets up there and then she senses that she should be scared of it because her mum is scared of it, then she's going to be too scared to come down, and then that's when you're going to get accidents and things like that. And so she was saying to me how she's had to really learn how to compartmentalize that worry, because it's a natural instinctive worry that she feels, and to just calmly support her child and encourage her child to come back down and to take those risks. You take more risks, you become more capable of taking risks, and it is a really valuable thing to learn, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, mistakes will happen, right? And so it's about almost like teaching those in a safe space. So, right, cool, you want to climb this tree, but think about, okay, what does a healthy tree look like? What does a dead tree look like? Which one do we want to be climbing? Starting to be able to make those choices as well. So you're kind of talking them through the process so that they can make those decisions themselves, and you're guiding them that way, and that's how you're making sure they stay safe. But it is so difficult to stand by and watch them climb this tree. You are so scared of heights, or you are so scared of them falling and breaking their arms or whatever, and still allowing for that to happen and for it to happen safely, I think is amazing.
And I think so often and so easily we as adults can get in the way of children's learning. And that's something that as teachers, we have learned that we have to be very aware of, is we can't let our own ideas get in the way of a child's exploration of a topic or something. Just because we wouldn't make those choices doesn't mean that it's not possible for them to, and they don't have the capacity to be able to learn the skills to be able to do that thing.
Yeah,
so it's so important.
It's a tough one, because you do have to almost like unlearn these things that are so natural, but it's so worth it when you do. And then I think what's also really cool about forest school principles is that there's a massive community, almost like a pillar, right? And so you've got the nature pillar, you've got the risk pillar, the holistics. There's obviously leadership, where there is professional leadership there who can create the space for all of this to happen. But I think There's a lot of leadership that we allow the children to have as well, that
Absolutely.
authority, right? Those choices they get to make. And then there's this community pillar or principle, and you get the parents involved and you get the children starting to care, right? Because I think, and this is what we've always known, is if you want people to pick up litter, talk to the kids. You get your kids to pick up their litter, right? And then they see a parent throwing litter down, they will tell off that parent real fast,
Yeah,
right?
it's true. It's true.
It's such a special thing to see because you're like, yes, I taught them that.
Kids become so passionate about something without the self-consciousness that comes with it.
Yes,
Like if we become passionate about something, but maybe it's a new idea that we haven't really explored loadsly. Yeah, when we introduce it to people, we're going to be like, how are they going to receive this? Like, how should I deliver it so that they're on board? And there's so much filtering that we've learned to go through. But kids, like they learn something, they become passionate about it. That's it. They're saying it. They don't care who's receiving it. They don't care who their audience is. I remember my sister when she was, I think maybe she was 10, she learned about palm oil and she learned about the rainforest, and she came home and she was like, we have to cut it out. We have to cut out palm oil. That's what we're doing. She explained to us
100%.
why. And we were all like, this is new to us. What are we doing now? Being bossed around by this 10-year-old. Then it sparked like a whole level of conscience in us as a family, purely because this 10-year-old was passionate about something. And that's the power kids can have, isn't it?
Yeah, the youth have so much more power than we give them.
So much.
And then I think they unlearn their power because we don't give it to them. And
Yes,
it's this really
I
sad
think you're
cycle.
right.
And so forest school education really does say, well, here's the power. Run with it. Often when I tell people that I'm doing this course, other than asking, what is forest school education? Questions come up about the curriculum. Because obviously in your typical schools, you're going to have a set curriculum. I know we've got certain things our government has said to us, certain things that they need to learn. And I found a little bit of a list on one of the websites that I was doing some research on about some of the curriculum that pops up. So creating toys, tools, and handcrafts with found natural objects, discovering or learning about the role of the trees in nature and society, discovering the relationship between the earth and the sky, which is a really cool one that I don't think enough of us cover. Noticing the gradual changes of a natural landscape through the seasons. And that forest schools will often be 2-hour sessions or more, a period of like 6 weeks or more. They're exploring complex ecosystems supported by identifying local flora and fauna, embarking on imaginary voyages and expeditions. That one I love.
I love that. I mean, all these topics that you've mentioned, they're so sensory. Like I can imagine what they'd look like, what they'd sound like,
Yeah,
what they would smell like in some respects too. And you talked about the seasons and what they would feel like to actually learn. It's so sensory, isn't it?
so sensory. And that's so good for the kids. And you are going to have children who, like thinking along the more autistic spectrum, that might be like, I cannot touch squishy mud. I just can't do it. And that's okay. Nobody says
Yeah.
they have to, because there'll be something else for them to do. And so, along with all these different things, often what will happen is you'll have a site that you'll be working from. And that will probably be where your campfire is. And maybe you've got like a little shed where you keep stuff that needs to stay out of the rain. So, like your firewood and that sort of stuff. Obviously, that depends on the property you're on and who owns it and if you're allowed to put this up. And then what will usually happen is you'll have a couple of activities set up in that main area. Children and practitioners will probably expand and kind of move outside of the main zone, but they'll always come back. There'll always be a reason to come back, might be to sing a song, to close opening circle, any of those sorts of things. And so a lot of the time, and I saw this at the school that I visited, was you're going to have like a mud kitchen. And
Love
that
it.
is just such an awesome way to incorporate so many different things, right? So for a couple of weeks, maybe during the harvest time, it's a fruit and veg shop. Maybe you want to kind of lead them on learning how to use money. So you're going to have different stones mean different things or different sizes of stones. And there's so many different ways to incorporate all these different curriculum-based things that we need to cover, but that you can just bring it into nature.
And it makes it relevant to them as well, doesn't it? If they're learning through play, I mean, it comes back to that play. They're learning these things through play. They want to learn them. They want to get good at them so that then they can get the most out of this play experience. And then it's a skill, isn't it? They don't
Exactly.
even realize they're learning, I think, with this
Yeah.
sort of thing. When it's fun, when it's play based, they don't realize that they're
And
building
that's when you get
skills.
them. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And then the experience just optimizes, doesn't it? Because then their skills get higher, then you can start bringing more in, and it just keeps going level, level, level up.
100%. And I just think it's so cool. So I feel like I've spoken for a very long time. Um, but then I know that you looked specifically at a theorist. It's
I
Kellert, isn't it?
did, but it ties really closely into what you've just said. I looked at I looked at a man called Stephen Kellert, and he's an ecologist, and he also works in child psychology research and stuff like that.
Okay.
And a lot of his work is based around like how to create an optimal setting for learning through bringing nature indoors and emulating nature in your architecture and design and stuff like that. But through that, he's looked into kind of how nature positively influences the learning of children. So he's suggested 8 values that he calls the 8 biophilic values. Philic means having an affinity or a desire to associate with nature. And it's an innately human desire. And we're all born with it, but we don't necessarily channel it because we don't necessarily have the access to or the means to or whatever. So he talks about these 8 nature-based or biophilic values, and I'll go through them one by one because they are so fascinating. The first one is attraction, and that's all about the aesthetic values of nature. So the things that you're looking at, the colors, the shapes, the
Beauty.
moments that exactly, like, you know, when a moment comes together like a sunrise or a sunset, and you can't pinpoint exactly what it is that makes it look so beautiful, but it does. And it's all of the colors and the shapes of the clouds and where the sun is in the sky and the silhouettes of the trees, and there's just so much about it that this one moment, all of these things together bring an aesthetic quality. And it's not just beautiful, but it's inspiring.
Yes.
So, and another thing is like the colors that you'll see with the plants or with the mushrooms or with the animals, and just those all of that, those natural colors that they just spark something comforting in you. It's not maybe it's just me that associates it with this, but like neon colors make me slightly anxious, whereas muted nature tones make me feel calm and peaceful. And he talks about the aesthetic qualities and how they can have such large benefits.
Yes.
So some of the benefits with those aesthetic qualities of nature and interacting with those are things like imagination. So if you're looking at beautiful things, you're going to start imagining, you're going to start creating.
So true.
Yeah, you're going to be inspired to use those colors, to use those shapes, to maybe imagine a woodland scene. There was a tree that I used to walk past every day in Banasa Forest in Romania, the one that we used to live next to. And I used to call it the mouse house. And it
I
was
was gonna
just
ask.
it was just this little it was this little tree trunk base, and it was underneath this big tree, and it had these holes in it, and on 2 occasions I saw a mouse inside, and it was very cool. But it was just the shape of it and the look of it, and the little holes, they looked like windows, and there was another hole that looked like it could be a door, and the fact that it was attached to this other tree, it was like a almost an annex to a house. And
Yeah.
just my imagination started to go wild, and I imagined this whole mouse family that was living inside this mouse house, and what would that look like inside. And
Yeah.
your imagination goes wild, you start to create, and then you can come up with stories, you can come up with
Songs.
artwork, songs. Yeah, exactly, you can come up with all sorts. So it's really good for that. And
Mm,
then also curiosity. So if you're curious about something, and something being beautiful and aesthetically pleasing is going to spark your curiosity. So you
mm,
might be like, why does it look like that? Or how can that better serve me? Or why do I feel inspired by it? There's that curiosity that's being provoked in you. And curiosity leads to exploration. And exploration leads to skills and also finding things out. So it does discovery, and it has therefore like a knock-on effect on your intellect. So just the aesthetics, just the attraction can have such a big effect on your learning just from looking at beautiful things. The next one is affection. So obviously everything out in nature or most things out in nature are alive. Some of those we can relate to better than others. So, like a squirrel, you can relate to it a lot better than you can maybe to a shrub, because it's a mammal like we are. It moves like we do. It has eyes. It has all of the senses that we do. So you can start to put personality into it, and you can start to build affection for it. When I was younger, I was quite the explorer, and I used to collect worms.
Divine.
I used to be worried that people were going to tread on them, or that they would get lost or something. And so I would pick them all up and I would put them in my pocket. And I was in nursery, so I was very, very young, and obviously not old enough to understand that what I was doing was not helpful at all.
No.
These little worms.
You
And I
were
would
getting them lost.
I was getting them lost, but they were getting lost in my pocket. I'd come home. My parents would check my pockets for any letters or anything and find all these worms. And it wasn't a one-off. It was a consistent daily basis recurrence. And thankfully, they were quite kind to the animals as well, and they'd rescue them. But it built in me like an affection. I was building empathy towards these living creatures, and I had so many pets, little pet woodlouse. I had pet snails at one point. A friend and I, we found some cool looking snails and we decided to race them. So we made them a whole race track, and we chose our snails, put them at the top. We were like, okay, let's see who goes first. We didn't realize at the time quite how slow this race was going to be. We learned about being curious, and we were building personalities on these animals, and we were learning how to identify them, how to resonate with them, and it built so much empathy. I really truly think that the affection that you can develop for your environment builds empathy. And I think that's the easiest way for kids to get involved in it, is through like insects and animals. And then as you get older, you start to become more aware of the trees and the plants and start to build an affection for them as you learn kind of how they're useful. Also, you learn how to cooperate with that environment, because it's important to you that you cooperate with it. And then we come on to aversion. So aversion is about learning what to avoid and learning how to keep yourself safe. And I suppose it comes back to the risk taking that you were talking about with climbing trees and stuff like that. One of the fastest ways to learn is out in nature. You get stung by a wasp, you're not going to touch any more wasps, are you? Quick as that, you've learned your lesson. I'm not saying go get stung by wasps. Please don't. And please don't make sure other people do. But you've learned your lesson, is the point there. It's like stinging nettles. They're seemingly innocent looking plant. The moment that you get stung, you're going to identify stinging nettles forever. And you're going to learn to avoid them. And you're learning to identify and you're learning to see patterns. It's like fast tracked. To keep yourself safe, you have to do that. And things like you see a puddle. Oh, cool, I want to jump in puddles. Then you jump in one that's a little bit too sticky and you've lost your shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Or too deep, right?
Too
So you
deep,
learn to like check with a stick.
Yeah, and I've mentioned to you about the child that I went on that muddy walk with, and he put mud in his mouth and learned the hard way, don't eat mud.
Exactly.
So, I mean, aversion is so valuable, and it teaches you to take risks, doesn't it? And it teaches you how to cope in those situations you've been stung. How am I going to cope with that now? How am I going to keep myself safe next time? And it teaches you so much, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Learning what to forage, what not to forage, right? What can we eat? What can't we eat? What do we need to cook first? All of those sorts of things also kind of come under that umbrella of adversity.
And there's no limit to the complexity of it either. The moment that you start seeing nature as a food source or a pantry, I suppose, then you start having to learn the difference. And then you start, like, there's safety levels. You could be like, okay, blackberries, they're really easy to identify.
Yes.
I'll just pick those and they taste good. But then you're like, okay, well, I know how to do that. I need to learn something else now. And then your skills, they just build and build, and your competence builds and builds, and it builds your self-confidence too. So the fourth one, which leads on from aversion, is dominion, and that's about your mastery. So you're learning how to take risks and master skills, basically, in dominion. I think one of the easiest examples I can give is hiking. So you go on a hike. We've been on a pretty scary hike before. That was definitely a dominion.
The one and only that I did in Romania, yes.
Yeah, so we went on this hike one time, and it was very steep and it was very high.
To preface this, it was only meant to be like a 3 to 4 hour hike
It was.
down the mountain, right? It turned into a 6 hour hike, which was
All
really more
downhill.
like a climb. It started bucketing with rain at one point when we were in the forest, and the forest was full with leaf litter.
It was
And so the
beautiful.
rain on top of that just made it so slippery.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah, but not only that, the whole way down, the trail was littered with memorials. Like every time we thought, we're safe now, another memorial of somebody probably not that long ago. It was dangerous. It was really dangerous.
Super dangerous.
But we achieved it. We got from the start of that trail to the bottom of that trail
We
in one
did.
piece. And that was a
We
mastery.
did.
That was a moment of achievement.
Yeah.
We were so relieved. I mean,
Yeah.
that's basically what Dominion is. It's about taking a risk, thinking, I'm gonna have to get through this. I can do this, not giving up. And obviously, if you've got to constantly be risk assessing, and if it does look like it's going to become too dangerous, you do have to give up sometimes. But we were in a
When you're
situation
halfway down a mountain,
we couldn't really give
what
up.
do you do? With bears, might I add. Like, we didn't
Yeah,
see any, but they
that was
were
real
there.
risk. Well, Jessie saw them about a week later, didn't she?
Yeah, she did,
On
didn't
the same
she?
trail.
And she just, and there's that risk assessment. She saw the bear and she just said, all right. And she turned around and she went straight back up because she'd barely
Did
come down. And so
exactly.
that was the right choice to make.
Exactly. And I do think part of this mastery doesn't just come from like pushing ahead no matter what. It comes from risk assessing and to being able to trust yourself that, you know what, you can do what's coming next. And if you can't, it's not a failure. It's you're making the right choice so that you're going to stay alive, basically. And you're still mastering something, aren't you? You're still mastering that risk assessment. You're still
Mm,
mastering that keeping yourself safe. That is a skill in itself. It's not just about going to the top no matter what. It's about constant risk assessing. And that risk assessment is potentially the most valuable skill that you could learn. So, Dominion is, Kellett described it as control of nature, but I think it's not so much control of nature as my spin on it would be working with nature and being
yes.
able to collaborate with nature, I
That
think.
understanding, right?
Yeah, because I think nature isn't something to be controlled necessarily. Because,
But
I mean,
you
we
cannot
can't.
control nature. Right?
Nature proves that to us all the time with natural disasters like tsunamis and avalanches and earthquakes. We can't control it, but we can learn to work with it and we can become
Exactly.
skilled in working with it.
Even on the smaller scales of like people who keep lions or crocodiles or hippos as pets, how often do we hear them going wrong?
That's right. Exactly. And usually it's because people are trying to control something and they're
Mm,
pushing past their limits, and that's when things start to go wrong, isn't it? So then we go into exploitation. Stephen Kellert is talking about exploitation as using the natural world for our material needs or our material wants. And that can be a negative thing. Like, absolutely, the way that we sometimes or very often treat nature in the modern world, we are exploiting it beyond what is respectful and what is appropriate. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you think about foraging, for example, if you're foraging in a respectful way and you're taking, let's say you've got a blackberry bush full of
yeah.
blackberries and you're taking a little tub full of blackberries and there's still loads of blackberries left on that bush, that's not negative that you're taking those. If anything,
Mm,
it's positive because they're being used. There's plenty left over for the wildlife, but you're actually learning a new skill. You're learning how to interact with that environment. Your relationship with that environment is getting stronger. So it's a positive.
yes, I'm
Also,
with you.
let's say Halloween, that's one of our themes.
Yes.
One of the most favored ways of us interacting with Halloween is through pumpkins. I think that that can go too far, and I think there is a certain level of awareness that we need to develop with it. But like we take it back to the like you think about pumpkin soup, we're exploiting nature for our nutrition. We're exploiting
Mm,
nature for our aesthetics if we're bringing a pumpkin in and decorating the house with it. We're exploiting nature and building a door out of wood.
true.
Like it's not necessarily a bad thing to exploit nature if you're doing it in a respectful, sustainable,
Mm,
and appropriate way. And I think that's what Stephen Keller is was explaining is it can actually be a really beneficial thing. It can teach you how to understand your limits and how to calculate how much is too much. But it can also help you feel secure, I think.
And I suppose also it strengthens that bond that you have with nature, so that when you have to make risks, that relationship that you've got with it, it's developed and strengthened through those
Exactly.
moments.
And
That's so cool.
then, yeah, it's really cool. And then we've got three more.
Okay.
So the next one is intellect.
Okay.
I think this one's my favorite because, well, before I started exploring forest schools, I had an inkling of this, but not anything concrete proven. So it wasn't something that it wasn't front of my mind about how nature could do this, but it can massively benefit your intellect. Stephen Kellert said something along the lines of that the natural world is the most stimulating environment that a child can ever be exposed to. If you think about when a child is stimulated and a child is engaged and a child is interested, they are learning so much. And we talked about it before earlier when you were discussing what a
Yeah.
forest school is and
Yeah.
how this environment is full of sensory experiences to be
Yeah.
discovered. And you could be there for 2 hours, you could be there for half an hour, you could be there for 2 weeks and still not explore the extent of it.
Yeah.
It's always changing. Everything is connected. Tree is connected to that tree and they're connected through a fungal network, and then those leaves are connected to the insects that sleep in them. It's like all of these wheels
Interconnectedness. Yeah.
circling and keeping each other moving in this massive mechanism. A guy called Peter Wohlleben, I've read some of his books and I really, really love him as a ecologist and author. And he talks about it as being a big mechanism, like a clockwork mechanism.
Yeah.
And everything in nature is helping all of the other things in nature tick by. You take one of those cogs away, no matter how small, everything else is affected. And
It all just
that is
starts
where
falling apart.
it does. And that's where nature can build a child's critical thinking. It can build a child's exploration and investigative skills. It can build problem solving, creativity, invention, so many things through just exploring. And if that's child led too, if that child is taking leadership over their own learning, well, then there is no limit to it. They're not being forced to do anything. They're just going to keep learning until they're done, aren't they?
Exactly. And you never stop learning. I think that's the thing, is like,
You never stop learning. That's
there is
so
no
true.
point where you're like, okay, I've learned it all now.
Yeah,
That's just not the
there is no
thing.
point. And that's life, isn't it? Like, that's the beauty of life. The more you learn, the more you realize what there is to learn, and the more you want to explore. And that outdoor world for a child is the most accessible way that they can experience that. I think it's stunning. It's
It
just
is.
so beautiful. Then we go on to spirituality. And spirituality is something that I've connected with nature a lot. And I've noticed that when I go out in nature, I can reflect and I can just process and I feel a connection with everything around me. And the more that I learn, the more connected I feel with the nature around
Environment.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I think it comes from like a collaboration of all of the points that I've already said, that you build that relationship with the environment, with the ecosystem, and it starts to have meaning to you, and it starts to build opportunity for reflection and for
Yeah.
contemplation. And you start to see parallels with nature and with your own life.
Yeah.
And nature it's a spiritual experience to a lot of people. In one of Kellett's research papers that I went through, he interviewed a bunch of children and their parents, and he asked them certain questions that indicated how they felt about nature and the experiences that they felt. And a lot of the children experienced like spiritual meaning and significance.
So cool.
Exactly. It's really beautiful.
And then we
And then
lose it by the
finally,
time we're older, right? We kind of just are like, well, there's no time for that, so ignore
there's
it.
quiz time. Exactly. And it's so sad because we start to get burnt out because we've got nothing rooting us down, nothing grounding us. And we just get so swept up in the pace of life, don't we?
Exactly.
And then finally, symbolism. So Stephen Kellett drew some links between language, how we communicate, and nature. And he was talking about how the patterns that we see in nature have built a lot of the foundations for which we communicate upon, which makes sense. Like, you go back
Yeah.
to very, very early human, everything they did was rooted in nature. If they were eating, they were getting it from nature. They had to find a way of communicating what it was they were looking for. If they were being chased by something, or if someone had been killed by something, they had to find a way of communicating what it was, how it happened. It's all natural processes. And you think about art, a lot of shapes and colors are rooted from nature. Like, it's about symbolism is about finding patterns in the natural world and how that can
It's
affect your way of
cosmic.
communicating. Yeah, and your
Mhm.
way of connecting different ideas. So the sort of skills that you're going to learn from that is communication, obviously, but also creativity, invention, language. You're going to learn how, like, people speak in metaphor, and it's
Yeah.
so effective. And those metaphors are rooted in nature.
They're all nature based.
And it's so I think it's fascinating. And there's these 8 values of nature. They work together, but also separately. The amount of skills that you're learning just by being in nature, just by looking at it, just by exploring it. Like, I just think it's crazy that there's not more people doing this.
I know, it's insane, right? I think that's the thing is there are so many different theories out there and so much different research that it's almost overwhelming to pick which one is the correct one for your country, for your school, for your kid, that it becomes really like overwhelming. And so I also find it so interesting that like certain research will tell you one thing is correct. And then other research will tell you, no, actually, that thing is wrong. You should do the opposite. And so you almost need to kind of find a balance and find what works for you and your kids. But there's so much knowledge and proof that forest school education makes such a big impact. And
There
whether
is.
we all try and incorporate it into everyday lessons, or just even into like once a week. I remember our nursery kids, right, at our school in Romania, they would go into the forest once a week. They were getting out there, they were exploring, and so they were getting a good mixture of the two. I think it's also really difficult when you've grown up a certain way to change your mindset.
Yeah, it is. But also what you said about the all of the different theories and how there are so many of them, and it is hard to choose what to listen to. I think if you look at it from, like, with balance and with discernment, a lot of it links together. And I think a lot of it links together when it's put into a similar context. And it's like you said, you like, if it's right for you and it's right for your school and it's right for your country, then a lot of these theories, they'll link together. Like, there's another one that I'm researching at the moment, and it's a completely different idea. And yet I'm seeing so many parallels between them because, like, it is all working towards the same thing. And the goal is to get kids engaged. The goal is to get kids developed and to get kids learning in the most effective way and enjoyable way for them. And so a lot of these theories want the same goal. They want kids to feel safe. They want kids to learn effectively. They want kids to become independent and intellectual and capable and competent with high levels of self-esteem and confidence. And so at the end of the day, like, they're just, it's almost like they're different sides to the same shape.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Quite
sense.
exciting to find
It
those
is.
parallels.
Yeah, it is. Both in nature and in research. I think it's really
It
cool.
is. It
Yeah.
is. I'm excited to experience a lot of what we're learning in theory, but to put them into
Yes.
practice and
Oh,
to
it's going to be so
tell
cool.
those stories when we get to that point.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Me too.
Talking about telling stories.
Oh yeah, the story of the week.
I know we've got Halloween coming up.
Yeah.
So I've got a very short little piece of information for you. And then I know you've done some research on something that you find very exciting. So I will start us off all about the jack-o'-lanterns. And you mentioned pumpkins earlier, but originally in the Celtic traditions, they would use turnips or other root vegetables, which were then carved with like menacing faces on them. And this was all to ward off evil spirits, right? And when the Irish and Scottish then traveled from Europe over to the US, they changed from using turnips to something that was found locally, which was pumpkins. And so that was why the big switch happened. I also would think it's probably easier to carve a bigger object than a smaller object. I don't know.
I haven't tried the smaller
No,
object,
nor have I.
so
But it just seems real fiddly. And I'm not so good with fiddly stuff. I have carved a pumpkin before. We did it in Mexico with a bunch of my friends. And oh my goodness, because obviously Mexico is quite a warm country, it got so moldy so quickly. It was a nightmare. And then everyone reminded me that over in the States, it's cold. And so
Mhm.
they last a lot longer. And that all just made a lot more sense to me. But jack-o'-lanterns have been possibly found as early as the 18s, but only really became a big thing in the US in the late 1800s. And so jack-o'-lanterns are thought to be a supernatural protector, and pumpkins are all about harvest, abundance, and fertility. And then turnips, other than being able to ward off evil spirits, were very much a staple in Europe, often around the poorer people, and they can be found as far back as ancient Rome, which I thought was really cool.
It's all about the harvest, I suppose, isn't it? What's
Yeah,
available, what people are going to eat, celebrate. Because, I mean, if we're going to celebrate anything, we'll celebrate what's feeding us.
exactly.
So
Exactly. And so 100%. And so, yeah, that is kind of where these pumpkins come from. And I would really like to encourage you, if you are carving pumpkins this year, have a look and see what else you can do with them. So I know when we were carving pumpkins, one of my friends had a massive bowl and we just chucked all the inners into there. And she then used the pumpkin seeds and those like stringy pumpkin, I don't know what to call them, guts. She used that to make dog biscuits for her beautiful doggo. So there's a lot of ways to reuse a lot of the stuff that you're using. If you also don't leave it out so long before it goes all moldy, I suppose you could probably chuck it into your compost heap. There's so many different ways that you can use them. So
there is. Yeah,
that
pumpkin
was,
soup is marvelous.
oh
And
yeah.
I always really like to roast up the seeds and snack on them.
Yeah, get them all roasty toasty.
Yeah.
And
Although
with
the
it.
last time I did that, I forgot about them. And when I came to them, they were not edible anymore.
No, 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 you burnt them.
I learned a lesson that day.
Oh gosh. Okay, but now tell us all about your, I think it's a creepy crawly, isn't it?
Yeah, more of a creepy fly. So it's called the bone skipper fly.
Ooh,
And I
that
read
does
about it.
sound creepy.
Yeah, I read about it in the springtime. Um,
Okay.
and I thought it was very, very, very cool. They are very interesting looking flies. They
Okay.
look like something from a horror movie or something from a Tim Burton film or and so they're this black fly with or almost bluish with a bright orange head, which is perfect for
Yeah.
the time of year, isn't it? You
Yes.
couldn't get any more if you're going to design a Halloween insect, then
Yeah.
you couldn't get more
Perfect.
perfect than this. And what these flies do, so usually flies like warmer weather, they like the milder temperatures and they like snacking on gross things, but also like fruit or compost or whatever. These bone skipper flies are different. So they like the colder temperatures. They come out at night time. I mean, it all fits so perfectly. They come out at night time. They like it in the colder temperatures, and they fly around looking for bones, the remains of animals and things, and then they will just feed on the insides of the bones. So they rely on something a little bit bigger coming and breaking those bones, like a bear or a wolf or a dog or something first, and they expose the insides of those bones for the bone skipper flies to come and snack on. Now they're so hard to spot because they come out at night, because they like it in the cold, and because they're looking for bones. I always imagine one like flying around a graveyard. That's not what they do, but that's what they do in my head. It would just fit the image, wouldn't it? But they're so hard to find that they were thought extinct for a very, very long time.
Wow.
And then one was seen at some point, thought to be extinct globally, all across the world. And
Wow.
then in 2010, somebody saw one and they realised they're not extinct, they're just really hard to find. It comes back to that clockwork mechanism, and that's kind of how I learned about them, because it was in a Peter Wohlleben book. The decline of being able to spot them isn't an accident. It's a result of there being fewer of the bigger predators. So a lot of wolves and bears and bigger predators are demonized a lot now because of the real danger that they pose, but it's not as bad as people make out. Like they're made to be a villain, when actually if you left them to it, they wouldn't be as bad as you think. And there's a lot of bad media around bears and wolves and those bigger mammals that are necessary for breaking down those bones for those bone skipper flies, but you wouldn't put two and two together until you realize that the bone skipper flies need the bones to be broken, and they're only going to get broken by a bigger mammal. And so by villainizing a big mammal like a bear or a wolf, you're actually having a knock-on effect on so many other things.
No,
That's
you
why
really are.
the
It's that
media
concept that you were talking about.
exactly. I would never have thought that it would have an impact on flies. My
No,
goodness.
you wouldn't.
But it does, and it's one of the coolest flies I've ever seen. Sad. But they're not extinct. They're still going. So look after our bears, and then we'll look after our flies in return.
Yeah, if we're looking after our environment, we're looking after these really cool flies.
Yeah, exactly. And these really cool flies I'm gonna dress up as a bone clipper fly for Halloween.
I love.
So, and I'm not gonna dress up as an actual fly.
Yeah,
I don't like dressing up. I'm
inspired
not a
by.
dresser upper. But yeah, inspired by. So put me in a costume and I hate it. But if I can color coordinate my outfit to fit something, then I'm all game. I love that.
Yeah, I
So
love
that's
that. That's so cool.
yeah, I'm gonna have a orange head. I think I'll put like a orange
Like a beanie.
bow or something on top of my head, maybe a headband or something,
Yeah,
and then wear black.
perfect.
Easy.
Sounds so good.
So, do you have an understory of the week?
I do have an understory of the week, and I will keep these ones quite short because I know we're running a little bit over today. It was just so much really cool information that we needed to squeeze in there. So I keep meaning to tell you the story of Ollie and the ants. When we did our spring episode, I really should have brought it up there. It was one of those things that I only ever remembered when Ollie and I were walking, but he seems so intrigued by these ant hills. Right, these little it's not a hill, it's more like a little mound where they're kind of pushed up through the bricks and the flooring, right? And the first time I noticed him do this, there were ants everywhere. So they must have just been the male and female ants that had broken through from the ground to come and mate. And he literally took his little nose and he went straight up to them and he was sniffing the little mounds. And he would I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but he broke it with his nose. And so he hasn't broken another one. And I've not been able to get a video or a picture or anything because he always walks so far ahead of me. But he still is so intrigued by these little mounds that he always sniffs them out no matter where we are, whether they're on the grass or on the bricks. He's always checking to find out what's happening.
Oh,
I just thought that was really cool.
dogs are so cute, how curious they are about stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just glad he hasn't started digging everything up in order to see what's happening down there.
Yeah,
But
just you wait. You'll see him and he'll just have a face of soil.
hopefully not.
There's a couple of ants crawling around.
Just yeah, where did all these ants come from? Oh, it was Ollie.
The ant boy.
The ant child. Yeah, ant man. Ant dog.
Yeah.
But then another two quick things. I know I told you previously about the common hornbills that I spotted.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them again, which makes me think they are nesting in the area, which is just
So
really,
you've
really
seen
cool.
them more. That is
So
really exciting.
I love, love, love that. That was, yeah, very exciting to see. And then yesterday, I went to a market with one of my friends, and we had just a great time. There was good food and good, like they had lots of dogs there. I really should have taken Ollie, but we didn't know at the time that it was so dog friendly. She's got a little golden retriever, and we were both saying we should have brought our baby. One of the things that I bought, well, there were two things I wanted to show you. One of the things that I found was from an NGO, Kusudila, which is a nature-based NGO. All the money that they make goes towards like animal welfare and that sort of thing, which is really cool. And so one of the things that they had, which they were just giving to people, was like a little nature scavenger hunt. And so you had
It's
to try
lovely.
and go around the little park that we were in and tick it all off. And if you managed to get a certain number of things ticked off, then you got a prize, which was just
That's
really
such a good
cute.
idea.
I
Gets people
love.
aware, doesn't it, and interacting.
Yes, exactly. It was good for the kids, gets them out and looking and venturing. But then another thing that, well, this was something that I bought, was a series of books because, you know, as a teacher, we can't just buy one, we have to buy the whole series. They are all African fairy adventures, written and illustrated by a South African teacher. And I just really love them. So there are 4 of them. There is The Lonely Weaver's Best Nest.
Are they
And she
folk
has,
tales?
so I think I will have to read them and let you know. I think they are just stories that maybe the authors made up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so like this would work really well in like your forest schools where you are probably gonna in your morning circle maybe read a story, or while children are having their snack, you're reading a story to them so that there's, you know, some sort of learning. And so these would be really good because it brings in nature and the animals that we see
Mm-hmm.
around us. I also just really love the fairies. So then there's The Perfect Gift, which is all about a seal and some seashells, The Cheeky Drongo and the Meerkats. So here's our little drongo and the meerkats, which I just thought was so cute. And then the
They're really
last one,
lovely. Beautiful, aren't they?
A Nighttime Adventure with your little bush babies.
That's it. I
Yeah.
remember reading a story about a bush baby once when I was a kid and it stuck with me.
I love them. They are so cool. Such big eyes. I think they're
I'd
just
love to
beautiful.
see
So
one in real life.
you're gonna have to come and
I
visit us.
am.
And
That's the
we'll,
conclusion we get to every time, isn't it?
I think we really do. But so those are my little stories. I'm really excited to read them, and now that I am in a class working at the moment, I will hopefully get a chance to read those to my kiddos. Um,
Yay, how exciting.
yeah, so that's really cool. So not much naturey happening. Ollie and I did go for a walk last weekend in nature, which was really nice. Yeah, just little bits and pieces from me. I don't
Yay.
think we've received any new understories from anybody else.
Well, soon enough. I'm sure we will.
Soon.
But yeah,
Yes. No?
if you've resonated with anything that we've said today, or you're interested in learning more about the learning theories behind forest schools education, let us know. If you
Mm,
want more videos like this, because this is a little bit different to what we usually do, let us know and
yeah.
we know to make more of them. I know we've got some ideas to make some more like this in the future, so let us know if that's what you want. And if you have any stories, Halloween based or otherwise, please let us know.
Send them on through.
Yes.
And if you've got any topics that you really want us to cover. And with that, thank you so much for joining us on today's beautiful, magical, and slightly spooky adventure. We hope you enjoyed all the information that we shared with you today and hearing what we've been up to. We would love to hear what you've been up to and hear what's happening in nature around you. If you would like to get hold of us, you can pop us a message on Instagram. We are at understory_learning, or you can pop us an email on understorylearning@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, share any of your stories, or even just get any information that you want for us to share. Well, for the two of us to share or to share with everyone. We hope you had fun. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, keep adventuring.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.